All righty. Okay, so welcome to our rendition of Dr. Pam's Pearls. We're getting it restarted again. I've done them in the past, but we're really committed this time to try to do it most months. We'll probably take a few off for holidays and things like that. So we decided to start our Dr. Pam's Pearls with weight loss because it seems to be a very popular topic. So this is about weight loss, metabolism, and the popular GLPs, which there's a lot of shots that people are taking to help with that, and just understanding what helps with metabolism. So we'll get started. All right, so common causes, this is our outline for today. We're going to talk about common causes of slow metabolism. What is GLP-1? How it affects appetite and cravings. How the body naturally produces GLP-1, the lifestyle factors that support that, the role that gut health has in the weight management, and just sustainable weight loss strategies. And we'll finish with some common questions. And there will definitely be time for other questions. So, common causes of slow metabolism. Well, we all kind of have experienced this a little bit, which is age. So as we get older, some of the enzymes that control our metabolism do slow down. Gender can be a factor because hormones are a factor. So men do tend to have an easier time losing weight. Not always, but overall, yes. Just like once you gain weight and your body composition changes, it makes it harder to lose weight again. And then there is some genetic components. So why weight loss is more than just calories. We have a little nice picture over here to the right. So part of it has to do with the hormones I alluded to earlier, like estrogen, progesterone. If you have estrogen dominance, it can make it harder to lose weight. Another hormone is insulin. Insulin helps with blood sugar control, but some of us can develop insulin resistance. One of the things that can cause insulin resistance can be candida. So if you've had any antibiotics as a child or as an adult, that can start to slow your metabolism. Gut health, which relates to some of that candida, but it also can be bacterial overgrowth. It could even be parasites. Everybody thinks that you lose weight when you have a parasite, but not all parasites cause weight loss. Some do cause weight gain. Chronic inflammation will slow your metabolism. And of course, stress, because of the role that plays with cortisol. A lot of times, if your cortisol is too high too often, you will have slower metabolism. Sleep plays a big role in that category as well, because when we do not sleep at night, we do not lose weight as well. So there is a connection with carbon dioxide that we breathe off, and we are actually losing most of our weight when we're sleeping at night. So if you're not getting to bed on time and you're not sleeping long enough, that will have negative impact. And down here it says muscle mass. So usually when you have good muscle mass, you will have better metabolism because muscle increases your metabolic rate. And then food quality. So processed food especially really raises our insulin. And then that leads to slower metabolism too. Just more fat deposition, really. Okay, so then we have the common causes of metabolic slowing, which we kind of just described. So this is just a list. What I didn't mention on the last slide was thyroid dysfunction. So a slow thyroid can also affect your metabolism. Nutrient deficiencies, which a lot of times it's a chicken or egg, like the nutrient deficiencies can lead to the thyroid dysfunction or adrenal insufficiency. So that would be things like low iron, low iodine, and our soil is so depleted that we don't get much iodine from our food. Selenium is also a very key part to our liver health and our thyroid health. Selenium is not real plentiful in a lot of foods. Pumpkin seeds is a good source. Brazil nuts is the best source, and then fish is another source. Zinc deficiency, magnesium deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, B12 deficiency. Omegas are very important, and proteins are very important. The amino acid building block that you get from your proteins helps with metabolism. And lastly, just repeatedly gaining and losing. So every time we kind of go through one of those cycles, it makes it harder to lose weight the next time. Okay, next slide. Okay, signs that your metabolism may need support. Weight gain, of course, but it also can be fatigue, especially when our insulin rises after we eat. Then we can feel very tired afterwards. So if that happens to you, you eat a meal, an hour or two later, you feel extremely exhausted, hard to keep your eyes open. There's a good chance that that meal did not contain enough protein or fiber or healthy fat, and just had too much carbs all by itself. The sugar cravings, that's when that blood sugar is cycling up and down. And then another sign would be gaining weight in your abdomen. Oop, I forgot to make my slideshow full screen. 1 second. There we go. Thank you, Tanya, for advising me of that. Okay, so then we have difficulty building muscle. That would be a sign of slower metabolism. Low energy after meals, and then feeling cold frequently. Okay, and let's talk about GLP. I didn't put GLP-1 because they're actually a GLP-2 now, and there's going to be coming out a GLP-3. So glucagon-like peptide is what GLP stands for. Some of the examples are Ozempic, Wegovy. The generic is semaglutide. So then what this GLP does, it's produced naturally in the intestines. We usually secrete it after we eat. It signals us to feel full. It slows the emptying of your stomach so that we feel full longer. By doing those things, it reduces our appetite. It also supports healthy blood sugar, and it enhances insulin responsiveness. So at first I worried a little bit when I started using GLPs whether people's insulin would actually go up, but it doesn't seem to really work that way. And it just, I can't necessarily say that it definitely improves insulin sensitivity, which is a good thing, so that you make less insulin, but it seems to be after you're on it for some time, it does help with that. So it's this gut-brain-pancreas connection. Get this slide to move to the next one. All right, so we do naturally make this. We don't have to take shots. There are other ways of delivery, but the injectable seems to be the most effective. So we naturally produce it after meals, as I mentioned. The thing about our GLP natural is that it's short-lived and it's influenced by diet and lifestyle. So if we get in a bad habit of eating a lot of processed food, we're going to lower our GLP production. If we don't exercise as much or get more, our body fat composition changes to higher fat with less muscle, we're going to make less. So the medications that we have mimic or enhance GLP-1, and they are more longer acting, and they're just useful for some individuals that have kind of like a big mountain to climb with trying to get back to the lifestyle changes they need. And they truly are deficient in this hormone, basically, or peptide, I guess is the better word. And it's kind of like insulin is a peptide too. So we don't expect diabetics who can't make insulin anymore to not take insulin. So if you have GLP deficiency, it is helpful to take it. All right. So I just want to explain the difference of these other GLPs, like Mounjaro is GLP-2. So GLP-2s have a similar effect to the GLP-1s in that it can still make GLP-1 longer lasting, so it controls your appetite that way. But the GLP-2, Mounjaro and Zepbound, they also improve fat utilization. So the GLP-3s, they use the term fat burning, but this just helps you utilize your fat more. So technically, it's kind of like helping with fat burning. So it just regulates how you're handling that dietary fat, and they still don't understand the full mechanism, so they're using the word may improve metabolic flexibility, but I have seen it help a lot of people with metabolic flexibility. So the GLP-3, that is retatrutide. It's not approved yet, but people are getting it from these research-only sites. And it has the effect of the GLP-1 plus the GIP, which is what is in the Mounjaro and Zepbound, which helps with that fat utilization. And then it also helps with glucagon enhancement, which helps to boost your body's energy expenditure. So you just are able to burn fat and other calories more efficiently. And the other kind of benefit of GLP-2 and 3 is the research so far is showing that there's less regain of weight when you use those and try to come off. All right, so we're going to go in a little bit more detail about how we naturally make GLP-1. So it is released from, oops, sorry about that. I'm going in the wrong direction. It was released from the intestines. It's triggered by food entering the digestive tract. It's influenced by how much fiber you're eating, protein, the healthy fats, and also your microbiome. So Akkermansia is one of the probiotics that does help. There are some other lactose and bifidose that also help. So that's where, like, some of my patients I have had go on the metabolic daily probiotic because that helps with natural GLP production. Okay, so foods that help with the natural production of GLPs is protein-rich foods, which doesn't always have to be meat, but it can be, or dairy. But you also have your beans and your lentils, nuts and seeds have protein. Other things that help are the high fiber vegetables. Believe it or not, even whole grains can help, but that's like not processed grains, but the grains with the fiber in it. Fermented foods help, and healthy fats like olives, olive oil, avocado, salmon, things like that. Okay, what other lifestyle habits help? That would be strength training, movement of any kind, getting enough sleep, reducing your stress, not overeating sugar, and eating whole foods, not processed foods. And then what about sleep? So poor sleep increases your hunger, cravings, reduces your insulin sensitivity. So then you're going to be producing more insulin when you eat, and it makes it harder to lose weight. So the optimal number of hours of sleep is usually 7 to 9 hours at night. So how does chronic stress affect things? It elevates your cortisol, as I mentioned earlier, and that promotes the abdominal fat and just increases emotional eating and increases that insulin resistance. So things that would help with your chronic stress are things like going out into nature, just like we're usually stressed about our world, you know, all the emails, like all the text messaging, like just kind of try to put that to the side and just go out into nature and, like, you know, breathe in the fresh air and look at the trees and try to bring yourself back to where we started from. Breath work does help, mindfulness or meditation, and just being with community, you know, being with the right people that make you laugh, that, you know, just make you feel supported really helps. And also just, you know, prayer and connecting with the, like, taking the burden off yourself of thinking that you're responsible for everything, and believing in a higher power really helps to know that, like, there's somebody else out there that is really on your side and hoping that, like, each thing that's happening to you is for your good eventually. Okay, gut health. So the microbiome, you know, the good bacteria versus the bad bacteria, the good yeast versus the bad yeast, they all help influence your appetite, inflammation, insulin sensitivity, all these things noted here, even your ability to produce nutrients, because your gut does actually produce B vitamins when it has the right microbiome, and also just to absorb your nutrients. So I'm just having difficulty for a second here, moving my camera out of the way. So this slide depicts just all those actions in your body and, you know, what the gut microbiome affects, which I already kind of mentioned a lot of them, but hormone regulation is another one that I didn't mention. So the healthier your microbiome, the healthier that you can metabolize your estrogens correctly. And we know that like there's a postbiotic called butyrate, which is one of the things that some people take as a supplement. But if you eat the right fibers, it helps with your butyrate production. And that is linked with your risk for breast cancer and colon cancer and probably other cancers that we can't even prove yet. So it's just so important. I know a lot of people go on carnivore diets or keto diets, and I supported them at times because sometimes it's simpler to just cut certain things out to just start the weight loss. But eventually, you do need fiber. Like somehow you got to get your microbiome healthy. And so, doing a full carnivore where all you're doing is eating meat can be very challenging to have the right microbiome. And even paleo sometimes cuts out too much of the variety of the fibers. So you just have to have things in moderation and in balance. All right, so this is just a little bit of a weight loss funnel that I came up with. So, eating whole foods is a big one, making sure you're getting your protein, your fiber, your healthy fats, as well as your complex carbs. It's better to have maybe like a spaghetti squash or a sweet potato over pasta or bread. Think about it this way sometimes. It helps me to think about like, is this food I'm about to eat giving me micronutrients, antioxidants? Most of you know that I have a tumor on my sacral nerve root. They told me it was malignant. It has not grown in 2 years. But one of my major focuses is I need food to always give me antioxidants that help me fight cancer. And so, like, if I eat a pretzel, that's calories, but there is like no nutrient. Like, I'm really not getting micronutrients from that. So, trying to have like nuts or seeds instead, or making myself even like a homemade potato chip is going to give me like the micronutrients of the potato, especially like a purple potato chip has like more of the blue antioxidant than a blueberry does. Another thing that sometimes we forget to do is fasting between meals. So, like, we have to give our body a chance to metabolize the calories we already put in and also to absorb the nutrients and, um, do all that important stuff. So, you want to have like 4 or 5 hours between meals, usually. I mean, there are some diets out there like Optavia or Optavia. They have the little snack bars and you have the different choices and you're eating every 3 hours. And some people can lose weight that way because they're limiting you to like 100 or 150 calories every time you eat. And people can lose weight. And if you're overall eating less, that's like fasting mimicking, is what we call that. So if you're limiting your calories, you could eat more often. But if you're having more than 150 calories at a time, then you really need to have 4 or 5 hours between meals. And then also that time from like the last meal of the day to the first meal of the day should be at least 12 hours. And women can go like 14 hours, men can go like 16 hours. And that can actually give your body a chance to get into fat burning better. You have to play with it. Everybody's a little bit different. I've had some people wearing continuous glucose monitors and they actually exercise fasted and then their sugar goes way up. And so we just figured out that for that particular person, they need to have a little protein before they work out. All right, so other things that are going to help with your weight loss is exercise. We mentioned all these things, sleep. And then there are some supplements like omegas or magnesium, and we'll go through a few others. And then there's the medication. So really the funnel goes like this. I've tried this, and now I'm really still stuck and I need help. So now I'm getting my GLP-1. All right, so just some sustainable habits, prioritize your protein and some healthy fat first. And then if you read Glucose Goddess a long time ago, I didn't mention fiber there, but that's still important. So she would say, eat the fiber first, like the vegetable, then you eat your protein. And then if you're going to have your complex carb, you always have that last. And that helps to reduce the rise of sugar after you eat, which will allow you to get into fat burning better. So I mentioned that on there, and then just staying hydrated. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you need to drink at least 50 ounces of water. if you weigh 150 pounds, you need to drink at least 75 ounces of water. And really, like tea and coffee, they shouldn't really count. Like you shouldn't be counting that in those calculations because they somewhat are a diuretic. So you're better off just like trying to focus on the water. And people do like carbonated water, but that's not the greatest for your kidney with some of the phosphorus in there. So, you can have that as a treat, but try not to have that as all of your water. Okay, and then minimize your processed food and focus on consistency. So you don't have to be perfect, but just the more you're consistent with that, the more success you're going to have. All right, and then if you have issues like the bloating and abdominal discomfort, you might be constipated or you might have diarrhea. So that could be signs of SIBO or leaky gut. And we do things like berberine or oregano or clove essential oils. There's capsules with it in it. There's liquids. You might need to eat kiwi if you're constipated. It has a special kind of fiber that really helps very well with constipation. Some people, oats helps, like cooked carrots. Like if you have diarrhea, you might need more bulk in your stool, but you also just may not digest raw vegetables well. So you might have to go more the cooked vegetables. So fermented foods could help move your bowels, but there's like a happy medium. If you go, gangbusters on eating tons of sauerkraut or kefir or something like that, you might actually have more discomfort or more diarrhea. And so just you have to go slow. If you have a lot of allergies, if you've been told you have high histamines, sometimes high histamines cause just joint pain. So you might not always have the typical like runny eyes, itchiness with that, but then you have to be a little bit more careful with fermented foods. Usually the Akkermansia probiotic is pretty safe for people with high histamines. Bifido type probiotics are usually very safe for people with high histamines. Some of the lactose can get you into trouble. And we're always going to say like, manage your stress, do your best, and then move your body. Okay, so here's some examples of supplements that I've really found that help if you don't want to go on a GLP-1 shot. So Quicksilver Scientific came up with one that's called GLP-1 amplifier. They used to call it AMPK charge. Before that, they called it keto before 6 because this liquid supplement, just 1 teaspoon of it, you can take it once a day or twice a day on an empty stomach before you eat your first meal, usually about 30 minutes before you eat, but it could be an hour before you eat. And then you could do it again before dinner. But it has berberine. Most of you have heard that berberine is a natural metformin. DIM helps liver detoxification, but it's especially good for people with breast cancer or a risk for breast cancer. It also has the quercetin and the resveratrol, some cinnamon bark oil. So all those things help with natural production of GLP-1, but they also help with liver cleansing and they also help with anti-aging. Now, maybe drinking like a liquid that tastes like cinnamon is not for you. Another option could be a mushroom coffee. So there's now a mushroom coffee called Agara, and that has berberine in it. But it also has chromium and green coffee bean and lion's mane for your brain. But it has L-theanine to help keep you calm. It has saffron to help with your mood. And they put some lotus leaf to help with detoxification. And you just need to do like a 1/4 teaspoon is like a 1/2 cup of coffee because they do put some instant gourmet coffee in there. Or they have, if you do a 1/2 teaspoon, that's like 1 cup of coffee. But, I have some samples in the office of that one if you want to come and try some of that. They do make a matcha version. I personally, there's like matcha just kind of activates my heart a little bit too much. And so if you're going to try the matcha version of this Agara mushroom product, I would just recommend just starting with a tiny amount. All right, fiber. Another thing I didn't mention, but like toxicity can lead to slow metabolism as well. And when we have toxins in our fat cells, when we shrink our fat cells, it actually increases the concentration of that toxin in the cell. So then our body fights us and it wants us to swell that cell back up that fat cell back up so that it doesn't feel as toxic. So when you're doing detox, when you're losing weight, you actually have to support the detox with fiber or another binder. So Triphala fiber comes from these 3 fruits. It's used a lot in Ayurveda, but I found that really helps to move your bowels if you're constipated. So like a half a teaspoon of that every day, and you can put it into some tea or even to your coffee. Usually mixing in something warm makes it a little bit easier. You can use carbon-based binders, also known as Shilajit, which is in biotoxin binder, or you can just get a plain fulvic acid. In the protocol I'm going to show you on the next page is there's an ultra binder, there's GI detox that combines things like charcoal and clay with the fulvic acid or with silicon. And all these things help to prevent Herxheimer or die-off reactions when you're doing things like parasite cleansing or Lyme treatment. But anyway, it also helps a lot when you're in a weight loss phase. And lastly, there's that microbiome support, which I mentioned earlier with the probiotics. So some of you are on that metabolic daily. That helps you produce your GLP better. It should help with blood sugar control as well. And then there's the postbiotic, which is what we're supposed to be getting from our fiber. But if you're not eating enough fiber, you can take the supplement called sodium butyrate. I've had some people that's changed their digestion to the better, taking their sodium butyrate, changed their life. All right, so here's just a little picture of kind of like a protocol that you could use for weight loss. So the GLP-1 amplifier I mentioned, and that just helps with like getting you into fat burning, getting you into ketosis faster. Then you got your ultra binder. Those comes in a capsule or a powder. So you would do like your GLP-1 amplifier 30 minutes before you're going to eat, or if you're going to do the binder with it, you would do like an hour before you eat, take the GLP-1, 1 teaspoon on an empty stomach, wait 30 minutes, then you take your ultra binder, wait 30 minutes, then eat. You don't have to eat right away. If you're like fasting until lunchtime, you could just do that when you first get up and then eat when you're ready to eat. Now, if you want to add some appetite control with that, there's this lipotone, which also has phosphatidylcholine in it. Those of you who have any chronic illness, fatigue, joint pain, things like that, phosphatidylcholine supports your cell membranes. And so sometimes when people used to talk about mitochondrial dysfunction causing autoimmune disease and fatigue and chronic pain, they were also like alluding to cell membrane health because the mitochondria is inside. You have to get things in through the cell membrane before you can feed the mitochondria. So like it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. If like my cell membranes don't have that healthy fat to support them to get the nutrients in and to get the toxins out, it's not going to work. I don't care how much coenzyme Q10 you take. And the other thing that like why I really love the amortal chamber or things that relax us is because if you can get your brain into that deep, restorative, relaxed state, that's when everything works better. Because if you're like fight or flight, worry, we're clamping down those cell membranes. We're clamping down our circulation so that it can't get to our fingers. It can't get to our toes. It can't get to the edges of our brain. So if we want these other organs to be healthy and function right, we have to learn how to relax. And so anyway, the lipotone has the phosphatidylcholine in it. It does also have a fermented type of product that helps with appetite control, similar to taking a GLP shot. So if you're trying to transition off or you just want to avoid them, this is what you use. I'll admit, this is an expensive venture to take all 3 of those every day, but so is buying a GLP. So it's like kind of pick which one you feel you're most comfortable with. I have a picture of the Triphala powder over here. And then a lot of you have heard of NAD. NAD is a like molecule that we have in our body that helps to carry your antioxidants, like hydrogen is our major antioxidant. That is also on the amortal chamber. And so NAD helps to transport the hydrogen to the free radicals so that you can get rid of that inflammatory free radical. So if as we age, we don't produce the NAD as well. So taking products that help support NAD is anti-aging. Can help with anything, joint pain or muscle pain is one of them. Brain fog is another one. So I've used this NAD Platinum for long COVID and had some decent success with it. All right, and so here's just pictures of some of the other ones I mentioned: the coffee, the probiotic, the postbiotic. And then just a few comments about how much protein should you eat to preserve your muscle mass if you're losing weight, because you want to lose the fat and preserve the muscle. So the general rule, I know a lot of people say 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but if you have liver or kidney, struggles at all, then you're better off to do a half of that. So if you're 100 pounds, you would do 50 grams of protein a day. If you're 150 pounds, you do 75 grams of protein a day. One way to look at that, if you have your blood work, you can look under comprehensive metabolic panel, find your creatinine. And if it is 0.7 for the average person, that's a good number. If it's high, you already have, maybe too much protein or creatine on board. You're already producing it yourself. And so don't add a lot more protein because you already have plenty. The other number I look at is BUN, B-U-N. It's blood, urea, nitrogen. That tells you about your dietary protein. Am I getting in enough? So normally it's between like 10 and 20 on average. So if you're already at 18, okay, I'm eating the right amount of protein. But if you're only at 10, you're probably not eating enough protein. So you can just use your lab work to help you. When you have your appointments with me, I do try to point that out to everyone. All right. And then, so creatine is a popular thing, but check your blood work, look at your creatinine. If it's already good, then you have to be careful with it. A lot of people are telling you to take 10, 20 grams of creatine a day for good brain health. It does help that, but the problem is there's some side effects. You can be retaining water from creatine too much. And you can just feel bloated from that, or, you're straining your kidneys basically. So, just pay attention to how your body feels as you try new things. And if it doesn't feel right, then you got to stop them because it's probably causing more harm than it is good. Strength training, that can be a plank, that could be a wall sit. It could just be, your chair, like getting up and down your chair without using your arms. It doesn't have to be fancy things. You can go over to a step and you can put one foot on the step and just, bend your knee down and push yourself up. That's a really good one for balance because you're on one leg. And you just, like our leg strength, our glute strength, like is so important for longevity. Plus arm hangs. So there's some research on like the longer you can, just hang onto a bar and hang there, the longer you're going to live. But, go to a gym, grab some weights, do that too. So if you're on a GLP shot, one of the advice about the protein is that the meal right before the shot, let's say I recommend giving the shot later in the day, after dinner might be a good time. And so dinner has to include 30 grams of protein. That once a week you're given that shot is the most important meal to get the 30 grams of protein. But then the day after too, like for the breakfast the next day, you might sometimes fast and not eat breakfast, but that day after the shot once a week, it's really important to eat that 30 grams of protein. And what that does is it stabilizes your blood sugar. Because those of you who are on GLP shots that are not diabetic have a risk of hypoglycemia. And you may not have obvious low blood sugar. You might just get a headache. Well, that's your sign of low blood sugar. You might get severe nausea. That's your sign of low blood sugar. So just some of these things, people just think, oh, I normally get migraines and I just got a migraine. It was just going to happen, but it probably wasn't. It just, you didn't have enough protein when you did the shot. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things. Remember that your goal is not just weight loss. It's about just improving your health, having a better quality of life, and feeling better. Okay, I'm going to fly through a couple frequent questions, but Then I'm going to check the list to see who's put some questions in, and I can unmute you so you can ask it verbally if you want to. So, so first of all, can I increase GLP-1 naturally? I think I already answered that for all of you. Yes, through all those things we talked about. Are GLP-1 medications right for everyone? No. A couple things about them. Research in the animals showed a possible connection with these very unique thyroid cancers called medullary thyroid cancer. And it was only in the rats who were genetically programmed to have a higher risk and also who were on high doses for longer periods of time. I've yet to know of any human on a GLP-1 who's ever gotten that cancer. So we really haven't seen it in humans, but they just warn people just in case. The prior GLPs, like the ones we used a long time ago, Byetta, Victoza, those could also increase risk, possibly again in animal studies, of pancreatic cancer. So that was like really scary, and that's why I didn't really use those. But we are not saying that when it comes to these GLPs that we have nowadays. It can increase in the wrong person pancreatitis. And so that is one where you get a very painful, inflamed pancreas. It hurts in the center of your abdomen, up towards the upper part of your stomach. It can wrap around. You can have back pain from it. And you get very nauseated. Usually you throw up when you eat when you have pancreatitis from GLPs. And you would get diagnosed with a blood test. Usually you have high lipase or amylase, but like really high amylase lipase. And you just can't even get comfortable. Like usually it hurts to lay down. It hurts to lean forward. And usually you're kind of like propping yourself like straight up and down is like maybe the only comfortable position. So I have only had one patient who had that. And it was when another doctor prescribed it and they were going up too fast. And she had a autoimmune disease of her liver bile ducts, which increased her risk. Another question, will I regain weight if I stop medication? It can happen because like you have to maintain the lifestyle, the change in the calories and the amount of exercise you did. So if you just stop the medication, you go back to old habits, you will gain weight back. The information coming out on the GLP-3, the Reta, maybe that will be not as much, or from Zepbound, maybe not as much. I have had people be able to wean down, or I've had some people wean off and be able to maintain a decent amount. Like there's maybe like 5 pounds that's kind of hard to keep off. And do I need to eat healthy on a GLP-1 medication? Absolutely. I think I did answer that earlier too. Okay, so summary is weight loss is influenced by hormones, metabolism, gut health. GLP-1 is a natural peptide that helps regulate appetite and blood sugar. And diet and lifestyle choices support that naturally. Gut health plays a major role. And there are definitely foundational things you can change to help your own natural things. All right, let's go to the questions. I need to go to my questions. All right, so if anybody has questions for me, and it doesn't have to relate to weight loss, these Dr. Pam's Pearls I'm doing every Friday is open to any question anybody has for me. So take your time, find the little question area, and they've changed the GoToMeeting a little bit. So let me go to where it shows me everybody, and if you raise your hand, I'll see if I can find your hand raised. I don't see it there. Thank you all for joining. All right. I don't see any questions yet. Okay. Somebody asked a question. What about the neuroprotective benefits from GLP-1s? Very good question. So something you might have heard is that GLP-1s can give us extra benefits besides just weight loss and blood sugar control. Because blood sugar can cause inflammation in your brain, which can affect if you've had a concussion, or like when you hit your head, am I going to have long lasting effects from a concussion? GLP-1s can, there's some early evidence that that can help in conditions like concussion or Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, things like that. So yes, whether you're improving GLP-1 through diet and lifestyle changes or through an injection, that will be helpful for your brain and your spinal cord. All right, I got another question here. If physical activity is painful, such as like walking, do I have any suggestions for physical activities? Swimming is often like an alternative because it takes some of the weight off of the muscles with the exercise. There are like just being like in a chair and like doing some weights with your arms or things like this. There's chair yoga. That's a good option. A lot of the YMCAs offer that. And there also is a Chinese or an Asian type exercise called Qigong. There is a local instructor at the Shotland Y. She teaches Qigong. Her name is Wendy Smith. And she also has like online classes live. And she modifies everything where you can be in a chair while you do them. So those are some other options. All right, so another question is, I've been hearing about GLP medications in pill form, and are these as effective? Let me get the rest of that question. And will they be any less expensive? So yes, Wegovy has a pill out, but so far I've had a bunch of people that was available as of January 1st. And some of my patients had already been on the shots and they tried to transition to the pills and they just don't work consistently. There's too much where, like, depending on the time you took the pill, what you ate before. I mean, I had people perfectly following the instructions. You're supposed to not eat for, I think it's, like at least an hour after taking the pill, and they would do all those things. And they still, like, one day their appetite would be as suppressed and the next day it wouldn't. One day they would feel nauseous and the next day they wouldn't feel nauseous. So, and the cost is about $150 if your insurance doesn't cover it for those at the moment. And some of these compounding pharmacies that have the generics, they also have sublingual. And I've tried people on those and they just don't work as well. I don't really think it's worth the money. Okay, so then there was another question about different bathroom scales that help you know like your fat percentage and your muscle percentage. So there's one called Hume, Hume, and it like connects to an app on your phone. So you stand on the scale and there's actually like something you hold with your hands and it's sending like a sound wave through your body, and the impedance of that tells like which is muscle, which is fat, which is water, which is bone. And it's kind of cool. It's usually about $200 or so to buy the scale, and then you just get the app, and you can get the free app with no monthly fee, or if you want a lot of detail about your composition, you can pay the monthly fee. But I actually just get the free app. I don't upgrade for that one. So, and then the next part of the question, do I think they're worth it? Depends on who you are. Like if you're really motivated by that, I think it's worth it. Like it's nice to see that I have, like, the Hume tells you, like, is my muscle mass on my right arm and my left arm like in a good range, or is it in a low range? How about my abdominal muscle and my abdominal fat? You get a lot of details, and I do think it's worth it. Okay, so another question is the Trifala powder, which is fiber. Is that better? Is the powder better than the pill form? I personally use the powder because I feel like it is, but it's all about compliance. So like if you're never going to take the powder because you're like, oh, I don't know, it tastes kind of like dirt, and I don't want to do it, then the pills are better than nothing. But if you haven't tried the powder, it's worth it. It's like, I don't know, $20 a bag or something. It's not very expensive. We do have it here, but also Banyan Botanicals is a very good company with the trifala powder, and they are on Fullscript. Okay, so another question is, does eating extra protein really protect against GLP related muscle loss? And don't you always need exercise or weight bearing to help not lose the muscle? I think, using both is definitely better. And I do though, like there is a gentleman who makes like an amino acid supplement, which is like protein. Amino acids are just like already broken down proteins, so they're even more accessible to your muscle. And he had this condition, like a Guillain-Barré like condition. And so he was like in a wheelchair, and he used to be like a workout guy and very muscular. So while he was in the wheelchair and not able to move, he started these amino acid supplements, and literally he gained muscle from them. So I think just knowing about that one case, I do know that just adding protein can possibly prevent the muscle loss without the strength training or the weight bearing. But of course, both together are best. All right, what do I think of the pill version? So I did answer that. The Wegovy one, it just doesn't seem to be consistent, and I don't think it's worth the money. So if you're going to do GLPs right now, the data we have, you're better off doing the shots. It's once a week. Can medications cause slow metabolism? Great question. Thank you for asking that. I should have probably had that on my list of things that slow your metabolism. Absolutely. Beta blockers. So when people have to take high blood pressure medications, especially the beta blockers, they lower our adrenaline. And like one of the ways you burn calories is by getting your heart rate up. That's why exercise helps you. Not only does it help you build muscle, but it also gets your heart rate up. And that's when we burn calories more. So medications that slow your heart rate actually slow your metabolism. The other one is like the antidepressants. They, not all of them, but a lot of them that really boost your serotonin can actually slow your metabolism and affect your insulin. So you can get a little bit more insulin resistant, which is not ideal. So in order to counter that, I had people on these antidepressants and not gain any weight. For example, Zoloft or sertraline is one where I've had people gain like 20 pounds, but then I've had other people gain 0. So I think it really, in the end, it's about like, did you increase your exercise? Because you might have to kind of like when you go through menopause, you have to exercise more to keep your weight lower. Or maybe it becomes even more important not to eat processed food. So like you might be able to eat a pretzel before menopause or before taking these medications, but now you can't get away with that. So those are the types of things. It's just like really getting into eating real food. Instead of like a pasta or a piece of bread, you're going to have like zucchini noodles or spaghetti squash, and then you'll still be able to have the calories, but one calorie is not always equal to another. And then moving your body, like exercise is very important. Sleep is very important. So here's another question. For bloating, nausea, or uncomfortable feeling in the stomach, what are my thoughts about inducing vomiting with charcoal or something else to clear out something that might be a toxin? You don't have to actually induce the vomiting per se, but charcoal does really help. I advise that for patients if they've eaten something that they're either intolerant to or that seems like maybe there was a pathogen like a parasite or a bacteria in that food and they're really feeling sick from it, then yes, take charcoal, can definitely help you. And then maybe just some extra magnesium, because I'd rather you poop out the food than to like throw it back up. But I guess vomiting isn't the worst thing in the world if you have something that's not good for you in your stomach. But they don't really recommend that anymore. Like if you go to the emergency room with food poisoning, they're not trying to make you vomit anymore or pump your stomach. They just usually do the binder and wait for it to pass. So great question. Thank you, Joe, for asking that. All right, let's see. If you have a sluggish gut, would it help to use GLP? Actually, opposite. So that is one of the risks of GLP, is that they make it even more sluggish. So that's where we have to kind of pause and say, is the GLP injection the right for this person? Because if you don't move your bowels as it is, you're already at risk for pancreatitis, because that's, if things can't drain from the pancreas, if things can't drain from the liver and the bile duct, you're more likely to get a gallstone. And that is another risk for taking the shots, is like, if you slow your gut too much, you're going to back up your sludge, going to make sludge in your bile ducts, and that's going to make a stone. And so you're more likely to make stones. But if you're pooping well on the GLP, that should not be a risk. So that's why, you got to have enough fiber. You got to have enough water. You got to have enough things that stimulate bile. So that's the one thing, like what comes from your liver bile ducts is bile. And it's it's kind of like Dawn detergent for your stool. Because without the bile, without the Dawn detergent, it's like this clump of like grease that just gets stuck. You can't move it. And so with the bile, it becomes water soluble, it breaks up easily. Now I can move it down my intestine. And things that help with that: cumin, coriander, fennel. Like you can make fennel tea with just fennel seeds. You can just chew on fennel seeds. You don't even have to swallow them. The flavor of that licorice-like fennel goes to your brain, and it tells your liver, release bile. Ginger helps with that as well. So ginger tea will help. Just like some essential oil, like Digize from Young Living, rub that on your belly after you eat. That'll help like absorb through your skin, help stimulate that bile as well. Coffee helps stimulate bile, which is why a lot of people like drinking it, because it helps them have a bowel movement every day. I don't know if you know about this, but like if you have issues with heartburn, coffee can be very acidic. And then if you have cold press, so if you don't brew it with heat, if you brew it with cold and you just are more patient, you do it overnight in the refrigerator, that's lower acidic coffee. But I guess there's some brands out there too that you can just buy, low acidic coffee. I forget the name of it, but there's one out there. So good question. Thank you for asking that, Donna. What time do we got? We are at 9:54. So I think I have another question coming in. Is it ever recommended to take GLP medicine in more than a 7-day increment, specifically to improve gut motility? So what I just said was that GLPs can cause slowing. So this is a good question, Erica. Thank you for asking it. You can cut your dose in half. So usually if we're going to, if we have a patient that like gets too much constipation, we could try, instead of giving you, let's say the 0.5 milligrams of Ozempic once a week, we can do 0.25 twice a week. And there have been some patients that do better with that. Or like Zepbound, if you're on like 5 milligrams, you cut it in half and do 2.5 on Tuesday and 2.5 on Friday. And that could help with motility. Yes. So very good question. Thank you for asking that. Let's see. Any concerns taking GLPs if you don't have a gallbladder? Another great question, Pam. So not usually when you don't have a gallbladder, you're more likely to have this dumping syndrome where things are going to go too fast. And so I've had a few patients that feel like the injections helped that be less. But, there's still a balance. If you take too much, like this is my pet peeve, is like some doctors are not really talking to their patients. And so they're just not teaching them how to eat right and making sure they're exercising while they're on the shot. So then it's not working. So they're going higher and higher and higher on the dose, just trying to hammer that until the patient's so sick they can't eat. And then they're going to if they had their gallbladder removed, that's going to be a problem. So I would just say, if you're working with the right provider and using the right dose, you should be okay, even though you don't have a gallbladder. Yeah, so that's a good question. All right. Is it safe for a 22-year-old male to start on Zepbound? And are there any long-term risks? What I have found is that, yes, it's safe. So it's approved down to like 18 years old. I think they're still doing some research on younger kids because we have kids that are diabetics that are 16-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So I do know that some people have used it at that age. Like I've had sometimes a 16 or 17-year-old use it. So yes, it's safe. But what about the long term? We do have, I mean, GLPs have been out now for 15 or more years with the better version GLPs. Because like 25 years ago, I could prescribe Byetta or Victoza, and that was a GLP. They just weren't, they had a lot more side effects. So they weren't that great. But these newer ones have been out for 15 years. So we're still getting more longer term data as, you know, the years go on. But what I found with the 22-year-olds is that it seems to be that they can change their behaviors and lifestyles quicker, lose the weight quicker. And then some of the younger people I've had, they come off. I try to tell people you should stay on for about 6 months, but some of my younger ones, they start to actually get, as your weight goes down, the side effects can go up because now you have less weight to distribute the same amount of medicine. And so all of a sudden, like, I can't go down low enough and they're still getting so nauseous, they have to stop it because they just don't need it anymore. So in my couple 22-year-olds or 20-year-olds that I've had on it, I've had, like, it's been about 3 months, they lose a decent amount of weight. And then it also just starts making them too sick and they go off. And so far, like, I've had some of those that like spent 6 months or longer and they've been able to just maintain. I mean, I'll admit they might gain about 5 pounds back, but they kind of just got in better habits and they were able to maintain. What else was I going to say about that with the younger people? Oh, that made me think about this. The other thing I found, even with adults, is not that a 22-year-old's not an adult because they are, but like people who are middle-aged or older, when I use that GLP, I'm going to go back to that slide, one amplifier with, so this GLP-1 amplifier with maybe a binder, I'll sometimes use Pectisol as my binder too. That's a citrus fiber powder. If they're taking those two things, it just starts to become like they don't need the GLP anymore. Their GLP-1 natural production goes up and they start like getting so nauseous from the Zepbound, I have to stop it because that's just a sign that like they don't need it anymore. Okay. All right. So I think we're pretty much at the 10 o'clock time. I did want to just show you guys that our next talk, I'm going to try to change the time. So sometimes I'm going to do Fridays in the morning. Sometimes I'll do like Wednesday at 6 p.m. So the next one's going to be a Wednesday at 6 p.m. And it is going to be on July 22nd at 6 p.m. And it's going to be about stress and anxiety and just kind of management techniques, but also some supplementation that might help with that. And then the one following that will be August 8th at noon. So that's going to be a Friday at noon. So appreciate you guys all joining. Anybody's welcome. So if you have friends that aren't my patients, tell them to join. And there will be a recording. So if they registered, they'll be able to watch it if they weren't able to watch it live. And I'm going to be working on putting it up on my website too. So, all right. Thank you guys. Have a great day. And I appreciate you joining.